electronic means. As such, council members may participate in person or by electronic means. Wow, it got really dark in here. Do we have anyone online? Okay, all right. For council members participating by electronic means, please ensure that your video is turned on and let the clerk know if you leave the meeting for the purposes of confirming quorum. Council members are reminded that in accordance with section 14.13 of the procedure bylaw, members must enable their video to confirm quorum. If council members attending by electronic means lose connection during any portion of the hearing, we will recess the meeting until the connection is restored. If council members lose connection during the voting process, team members will get you back online quickly while we suspend the voting process. The contact information has been circulated to you. Members of the public can view the proceedings via the live stream and YouTube link, which will be posted on X at Van City Clerk. Now, I do want to acknowledge that we're hosting today's public hearing on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And I really do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and the care they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn the true history as to what's happened on these lands. If we do that, we're going to build an incredibly beautiful future full of love and prosperity, not just for all of us here, but going out 7+ generations. Also, in case of an emergency where we need to evacuate the building, please calmly walk through those glass doors, not through them, they will open, but walk through and take a left at the post and walk down the stairs. If that's obstructed for any reason, there are 4 exits here, and we'll direct you accordingly. If you require accessibility assistance, please remain at your location and wait for security team members to guide you to a safe location. Oh yeah, also we have a defibrillator just down the hall here, so if you're not feeling that great and your heart's a little sore, let us know. We will run and get it for you. I do also want to take a moment to acknowledge all of our incredible teammates at the City of Vancouver. We've all had the benefit of seeing them in action, working side by side and with them, and I can tell you, you're absolutely amazing, and our city is in incredibly great hands, and so proud to be part of your team. With that, can we please have a roll call?
Sure. Mayor Simmons in the chair. Councillor Carr.
I'm present.
Councillor Kirby-Young.
Present.
Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly.
Present.
Councillor Boyle has a leave of absence for personal reasons all day. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Clausen.
Present.
Councillor Meisner.
Present.
And Councillor Jo.
Present.
The hearing has quorum.
Thank you very much. Now, before we begin, I have some announcements. The public may participate by speaking in person, by phone, or by submitting written comments to Mayor and Council. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. Speakers should also state whether they are in support or opposed to the recommendations and if they are a resident of Vancouver. Those speaking on behalf of 4 or more persons or groups, including the speaker, will have 8 minutes to speak, and only if those represented confirm by introducing themselves online or in person. Those who are represented by another speaker must not be individual speakers themselves. Speakers may only speak once and should follow along on X at Van City Clerk for updates on the progress of the meeting so they don't miss their turn to speak. Any comments on agenda items can be submitted in writing through our online Mayor and Council public hearing feedback web form. This link will also be posted on X. I do also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including utmost respect for all genders. I remind Council that when addressing speakers and team members, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. A reminder that Council's role at a public hearing is to be a quasi-judicial body, which means Council is to only consider the merits of the rezoning application or heritage designation. Council members may ask clarifying questions from speakers, including the applicant, or technical advice from team members, but should save debate for after the close of the speakers list. After hearing from speakers, council may 1, approve the application in principle, 2, refuse the application, or 3, refer the application to team members for further consideration. Finally, if council does not conclude hearing from all speakers this evening, we will recess and reconvene the meeting on Thursday, September the 26th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Okay, so the first item on the docket is number
Mayor?
1.
May I have
Sorry.
a point of privilege before we start?
Yes.
If it's okay, I just wanted to acknowledge, because I always think it's fantastic when it happens, that we have a number of public policy students from Adler University and their instructor here in the gallery who are here to observe local civic democracy in action. And so I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate that, if I might, and thank you for indulging.
Thank you. You know, I should have put my glasses on. If I saw Justin up there, I would have said, clear the room. No, I'm just kidding. It's so great seeing you. It's great seeing you, and welcome, by the way. This is pretty cool. So thank you. Okay, thank you for that, Counselor. Okay, so the first item we have on the docket is number 1, rezoning 4708 to 4742 Joyce Street and 3604 Tanner Street. Now, does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? Right, seeing none, the clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by Matthew Chang Architect Incorporated to rezone 4708 to 4742 Joyce Street and 3604 Tanner Street from R1-1 Residential Inclusive District to RR2C Residential Rental District to permit the development of a 6-story residential rental building where 20% of the residential floor area will be secured as below market rental. A floor space ratio of 2.70 and a height of 19.8 meters are proposed. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing. 2 pieces of correspondence in support and 3 pieces of correspondence in opposition. This represents all correspondence received up to 5:15 today.
Okay, great. Thank you. So this is the first call for speakers. Any speaker for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by the participant code 1061445 # before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added to the end of the registered speakers list. Now, so do we have any speakers for this item? We do have 1 registered speaker. Okay. So we have team members from Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability here to present the application. Councillor Kirby Young, you're on the docket here. You're good? And so you're on again, so I'm going to take you off twice. Okay. Well, seeing no one wants to waive the presentation, we are going to go ahead with the presentation. So please go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just not able to hear. Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the public. My name is Kathy Joe, and I'm the rezoning planner for this application, which is being considered under the secured rental policy. Outlined in red is the subject site is comprised of 4 legal parcels. The surrounding area is currently zoned R11, and the subject site is developed with a church and a single detached house. There are no eligible tenants under the tenant relocation and protection policy. The site is well served by transit and amenities. The site shown in red is located near 3 schools and several parks. The Joyce Collingwood Station and 29th Avenue Station are approximately 500 and 1.5 kilometers away. The site is also served by a number of bus routes, including the number 41 and 26 buses. The enabling policy for residential rental zones is the Secured Rental Policy, or SRP. The SRP encourages new, purpose-built rental housing and aligns with the rental housing goals of the Housing Vancouver strategy. The SRP also aligns with the complete neighborhood goals of the Vancouver plan. Updates to the SRP were approved by Council in 2021 to create residential rental, or RR zones, and a map which designates eligible areas for the standardized RR zones. The application is also located within the third tier under the Joyce Collingwood Transit Oriented Area Policy, or TOA, which would allow up to 8 stories and 3.0 FSR. The applicant was informed that they would also be eligible to rezone under the TOA rezoning policy, but have chosen to continue under SRP. Rezonings to standard rental district schedules have a simplified rezoning process. Instead of customized site-specific CD1 zones, the RR district schedules establish a clarity on permitted use, height, and density. The RR zones also provide more certainty about what building forms may be permitted in low-density areas. The schedules are accompanied by comprehensive design guidelines, which mean architectural drawings are not required at rezoning. The specific building design would be reviewed through a future development permit process in which the neighborhood is notified again to provide their input. This map from the Secured Rental Policy shows sites which are eligible for rezoning. Sites are eligible for rezoning based on proximity to public transit and local shopping, as well as being located on the first full block on either side of an eligible arterial road. The yellow star outlined in purple indicates the site of this application located at the corner of Joyce and Tanner Streets, west of Boundary Road. Shown in blue are the blocks around the site that are also eligible for rezoning to an RR district. The eligible RR zone options for this site are shown on the screen. For the subject application, the applicants are proposing an RR2C zone, which requires 20% of residential floor area to be below market units. The applicant is proposing an RR2C zone, which allows for a 6-story rental apartment building, with 20% of the residential floor area as below market rental units. Because the subject property is a corner site, a density of 2.7 FSR is permitted. The Housing Vancouver strategy seeks to deliver a range of tenures and affordability across the housing continuum. Renting has a lower monthly cost than home ownership. Shown in green to the right are typical market rate rents for newer buildings on the east side of Vancouver. In comparison, shown in blue, the below market units target households with lower incomes. Under the SRP, below market rents must be 20% less than the average citywide rents as published by CMHC. A total of 35 submissions were received during public consultation. Support was given for the increase in overall rental housing and for the height and density given proximity to transit. Concerns were expressed regarding the lack of parking for the area and the potential negative impacts to traffic, safety, and congestion. In response to concerns, staff note that the proposed height and density is consistent with the Secured Rental Policy and the RR2C district schedules. The proposed form of development were reviewed at a later development permit stage. In response to concerns of traffic safety, staff note that the rezoning conditions have been included to deliver improvements to address safety for all road uses, which include new intersection lighting and street improvements at Joyce and Tanner Street. The public benefit accruing from this application are the secured market and below market rental housing. There is also a DCL contribution of approximately $609,000. The applicant is pursuing the DCL waiver applicable to residential rental buildings. No CAC contribution is due, as the CAC policy for rezonings exempts routine, low-density secured market rental rezonings. In conclusion, this proposal meets the intent of city policy by delivering a secured rental building with 20% of the units below market rate. Staff support this application to rezone to the RR2C district schedule with the form of development reviewed through the development permit process. Staff and the applicant team are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Would the applicant team like to present the application if in attendance?
I'm the applicant. I'm waiting for any question.
Great, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council to our team members or the applicant team, noting that this is the only opportunity for council to ask questions of the applicant? Sorry, and Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Just one quick question. I don't know if it's would be best for staff or the applicant, but you mentioned in your presentation that they, even though this is tier 3 under the TOA, could allow for an 8-story building here. They chose to stay at 6. I guess 1, was there a rationale given, and 2, have we been seeing this in other applications? And if so, why? Like, is there a cost issue here with, I don't know if it's with elevators or building costs, or what the difference between the 6 and 8 stories would be? Usually we see the added density wanted, but
Thank you for your question. We did inform the applicant, and they informed me that they would like to keep pursuing the application as is under the SRP. A new application would have been submitted if they were to go under a TOA, under the TOA policy. They would have to start from
okay, so it's a time issue, most likely?
more than likely.
Okay, I'm seeing a nodding of the head. Okay. And I see you're the big guy coming up with this.
Certainly time is a factor, but I think one trend we're observing with 8 stories is there tends to be a fairly significant delta you need to go up in scale to cover the cost of the different types of construction that come above that 6-story scale. So something to resolve through our policy and implementation of TOE, to be sure, to make sure that projects are viable.
So you're saying like an 8 to 12-story building isn't very viable?
It tends to, what we tend to see is, more of that 10, 12-story scale before it starts to make sense again from a economic standpoint, going to concrete construction or even mass timber, just with the cost basis being relatively similar to concrete. That's obviously site dependent, but that's what we tend to see in the economics of development.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I appreciate that. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445 pound before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. So we will now hear from the public. The first speaker we have is Melanie Cheng.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome. Please go ahead.
Okay, first, I'm just to clarify, I'm here on behalf of Collingwood Recreation Society. I'm also the chair of DPAC. I wanted to first tell you about our society. We're a grassroots organization formed by the Joyce Collingwood community. We have over 1,500 members. We have 70 members that have come together to submit their letter in support of what I'm going to say. And I can deliver those letters to City Hall. And those letters say that we are not well served in this community, contrary to what was indicated in that presentation. Our organization was formed to help meet the needs of the recreation in our community. Our head office of our nonprofit is My Kitchen Table. My Kitchen Table is a few houses down from that development that we're talking about. The other directors are my neighbors. And let me tell you about what we do. There are many groups in our community that need space because Collingwood Neighborhood House is actually full. Our nonprofit finds space for groups and subsidizes the rental costs for instructors of these groups who want to share their skills with other community members to provide free workshops for the public. So in doing this, we've created new opportunities for different cultures to connect. We've offered free Brazilian dance lessons, free Chinese cultural dance lessons, how to play Mahjong Club, and some Zumba lessons. So we've noticed that it's increasingly difficult for our nonprofit organization to find space for groups to run their programs. we are not sure if we can continue to offer our programs again this coming year. And for my work, I won a King Charles III Coronation Medal. We provide significant value to our community, but we cannot continue to run from my kitchen table. I am asking for shared space in this building's common area for my nonprofit organization to run some of our programs. I've contacted the developer about this request. They didn't seem receptive, and I would like the application to be amended to include community benefit, and this is not an unreasonable request because we need this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Melanie. So do we have any speakers on the line or in person?
There are no further speakers at this time.
Great, thank you. So this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445#. Before the close of the speakers list, the phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. So we're now going to take a 5-minute recess for any additional speakers.
Sorry, I was just getting a
Nope, that's all good.
broadcasting, Mayor Sim. No speakers, no new speakers on the line. Are you seeing any, none in the audience?
Great, okay. Seeing that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. Since none or few public comments have been received after 5 PM today, I'm also going to close the receipt of public comments. Okay. Okay, so does the applicant have any closing comments? Thank you very much. Do our team members have any closing comments?
Staff have no comments.
Great, thank you. Does council have any questions for our team members? Councillor Kirby Young.
Yeah, thanks. I have one follow-up question for staff, and that was with respects to what we heard from the speaker. And I wonder if you can comment about any sort of commercial or nonprofit institutional uses and how they would or would not be permitted with respects to the proposed residential rental zoning that is being requested this evening through this application?
The SRP was designed to create opportunities for rental housing. In this case, the proposal is delivering 20% of the floor area as below market rental. So there's no additional opportunity for a public benefit to be generated on the site. There is a public benefit strategy for the Joyce Collingwood neighborhood, and there will be other opportunities to secure benefits like community spaces through those projects.
Okay, so the public benefit, just to reflect back then, because that question was raised by the speaker in this case, is the below market rents to help people with 20% below on the citywide average, which can sometimes end up being higher than 20%. And that is where the public benefit goes, just in terms of the calculation doesn't allow for additional room to deliver something else in this particular building. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Happy to move the recommendations. Mayor, seeing no one else on the queue?
Okay, before we do that, one more sentence before that. So, did we receive any additional public comments since the close of the public comments?
No.
Okay, great, thank you. So council will now make its decision on this application, and we have a mover. I think it was Councillor Kirby Young, and the seconder was Councillor Montague. Thank you very much. Is there any debate? Great, seeing none, why don't we bring this to a vote?
Mayor, if I can get a vote assist in favor, please.
Yes, you can. Councillor Bly. Great. Great. And so that passes unanimously. Congrats. Great. So we will move along to item number 2, CD-1 rezoning, 5630 to 5678 Heather Street. Does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item number 2? All right. Seeing none, the clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by Anthem Heather Street Holdings LP to rezone 5630 to 5678 Heather Street from R1-1 Residential Inclusive District to CD1 Comprehensive Development District to permit the development of an 18-story mixed-use rental building containing 184 units, where 20% of the residential floor area will be secured as below-market rental and ground floor commercial space. A floor space ratio of 5.74 and a height of 55.7 meters with additional height for rooftop amenity space are proposed. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing. 5 pieces of correspondence in support, 7 pieces of correspondence in opposition, and 2 pieces of correspondence dealing with other aspects of the application. This represents all correspondence received up to 5:15 today.
Great, thank you very much. So now this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445 # before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added to the end of the registered speakers list. We have our team members from Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability here to present the application.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Lauren Whitney, planner for this rezoning application being considered under the Canby Corridor Plan. All right. The site, outlined in red, is located on the east side of Heather Street, between 39th and 40th Avenues. The surrounding context is mainly residential, with commercial buildings fronting West 41st Avenue. There are several major sites nearby, including Oak Ridge Center, Heatherlands, and the Oak Ridge Transit Center. The existing site is a 3-lot assembly of 3 single detached homes. 2 homes are owner-occupied, and 1 is secondary rental, occupied by 1 tenancy. The tenant relocation and protection policy applies. The property at 5668 Heather Street is currently tenanted with a private childcare facility. The site is well served by transit and amenities, with bus and SkyTrain service, bikeways, community centers, and parks all located nearby. The site is in Tier 2 of the Oak Ridge 41st Avenue station area, which, under TOA policy, permits 12 stories and 4 FSR. The allowable height in this area under Canby Plan exceeds the Tier 2 TOA minimum. The plan anticipates residential and mixed-use buildings up to 18 stories if 20% of the residential is below market rental. Supportable density is based on urban design and public realm performance. In addition, the public realm plan envisions a mid-block pedestrian link at this location. The October 2023 application proposes a density of 5.74 FSR and a building height of 183 feet. The proposal includes 184 rental residential units with ground floor commercial. 35 rental units will be secured at below market rates. Loading and 3 levels of underground parking will be accessible from the lane. This application is consistent with the plan for an 18-story tower on podium building form with an active link. This table compares the monthly cost of below market rental, and homeownership in this area. As outlined in red, this application would provide below market and market rents, which are more affordable than homeownership costs for equivalent units in this area of the city. 13 submissions were received during public consultation period. Support was expressed for the below market housing component and the proximity of additional rental units to Oak Ridge Center. Concerns were related to the increase in neighborhood density and worry that on-site parking provision is excessive. The public benefits from this application are the secured market and below market rental housing units. In addition, this proposal will contribute over $2.1 million in development cost levies and a public art contribution. A citywide DCL waiver has been requested by the applicant. In summary, staff have concluded that this proposal is consistent with the Canby Plan and support the application subject to conditions in Appendix B of the report. Staff and the applicant team are available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant team like to present the application if in attendance? Thank you. Okay, are there any questions from council to our team members or the applicant team? Only opportunity for council to ask questions of the applicant.
Sorry.
Sounds like the furniture at my house. All right.
Sorry about that.
All right, last chance, everyone. Okay, seeing no one in the queue. This is the second call for, sorry, there you go. Councillor Kirby Young.
Sorry, I jumped on late. I'll bite on the, Chris, on the question and currently improve the childcare, and just if staff can comment, given our shortage of childcare spaces around, and we're trying to add to them, not lose them, just in terms of what that looks like with replacing replacement of the childcare with housing?
Mark Pickersgill, senior social planner in arts, culture, and community services. In terms of particularly this project and within the Cambie corridor, we have some policy that identifies support for trying to retain childcare in the area. However, to this point, we have no policy that does support privately owned childcare. And the application of that policy has been for institutional childcare in very few instances to this point. But again, this is the intention of this is to try to find as many opportunities to land childcare as possible. However, in this proposal and this development, the applicant is definitely within the realm of the policy. So we're basically looking at, it's subject to their own analysis at the end of the day.
Okay, and we've prioritized institutional, which is typically larger, 37 spaces, typically around the spot
Typically,
versus a smaller
yeah.
number in a private, particularly in a home situation?
Well, typically, when I say institutional, we're talking about, it could be in things like churches, et cetera, that typically have a consistency in use across time. That's really the key piece there too. But in the instances in which we have applied this type of policy, it has been replacement with public childcare.
Okay, thanks. Teen, did you want to add something?
Thanks, Councillor Kirby-Young. Just to reinforce what Mark said, the policy is specifically to support the retention or replacement of public or nonprofit. So because this is a private Montessori childcare, there isn't a policy for replacing private Montessori childcares.
Okay, good to know.
That helps.
It does, thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Clausen.
I suppose less of a question than a comment that when we are losing childcare spaces, that we should probably be keeping a track of those things. But I'm hoping that that staff could perhaps. My question to staff is whether they would be able to keep track of the loss of any spaces like this, so we can perhaps evaluate that and find replacement, regardless of whether it is a public nonprofit or through a private operator.
Thanks for the question. In terms of tracking the losses, I'll let Mark speak to that. But what I can say is that in the Cambie corridor, what we're doing a great job of is adding new childcare spaces quite significantly in a lot of the larger sites. You'll see one tonight coming up after this item that's doing a 69-space childcare. So we're doing a pretty good job in terms of adding new, and in terms of tracking the loss of private and public, I'll let Mark speak to that.
Definitely to that question, we do track any new and anything that is lost on a quarterly basis, and so we are definitely keeping track of everything that is coming through and that we are also losing, and that's across the spectrum of the different types of childcare.
Thanks very much. And I'm aware of some of the new spaces that have been created through in-kind opportunities in Cambie corridor, but just want to make sure that we sort of redline the losses of spaces during this time. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Okay, this is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061-445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. So now we're going to hear from the public, and we do have one speaker, Kyle Johnston. Kyle, are you online there? Oh, I'm on the wrong list. Sorry. Take that back. But we do have a speaker. The first speaker is Eileen Xiang. And I believe you are a representative speaker. And so do you have 3 other groups? It's 3, right? 3 groups either online or in the chamber. Eileen, are you online?
Oh, hello.
Hi, Eileen. How are you?
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good
Esteemed
evening.
counselor.
Eileen, sorry, do you have 3 other groups that are online or in the chamber right now?
Yes, I do.
Can you please
Yes.
identify them?
Their name is Huiling Lee, James Shang, and Vicky Lee.
Sorry, Eileen, just if you can bear with us for one moment, please. Yeah. So Eileen, are they with you right now?
They're participating in the council meeting in person,
Oh,
but
they're
I will
here.
be
Oh, there
delivering
we
the
go.
speech online.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We just wanted to make sure we gave you the right amount of time. So you have 8 minutes to speak on behalf of your group. Please go ahead.
For sure. Thank you so much, Mayor Sim. My name is Eileen Shang, and I am a local resident of Vancouver, and I'll be representing the Child Care Center and families that are impacted by the development project 5630-5678 on Heather Street. And we are opposed this project on a condition. I am here today as both a teacher and an advocate for the children and the families in our child care center. We have been operating this child care center that has served the city for nearly 10 years. Our school has provided a nurturing environment for hundreds of families in Vancouver. It is a cherished place where children grow, learn, and prepare for the next stage of their lives. However, we are faced with an urgent and difficult situation, and we hope you can help resolve. The developer has issued a construction date for May 2025 for the development project, which includes our child care facility. The developer has delayed the funds for over 1.5 years until the near end of June 2024. Yet, the developer dismissed our request to delay the construction date for only 3 months until August 2025. Without the funds prepared, it is feasibly impossible to prepare a new childcare center within less than a year's time frame. This compounded the difficulty we now face in making an urgent relocation possible. If we followed the developer's timeline, we would have to shut our doors in May 2025, just a few months before our children are set to graduate. The impact of this would be devastating, not only for the children, but also for their families. These young students deserve the stability and continuity that they have been promised. To uproot them at such a critical time in their development would cause significant distress to them and their families, many of whom have carefully planned their work and personal lives around the schedule of our center. I am here today to respectfully request a 3-month delay in this construction date, specifically until the end of August 2025. This will allow us to complete the school year, ensuring that our children can graduate with the celebration and closure they deserve. It also gives their families the necessary time to find alternative childcare arrangements without being forced into a rushed or chaotic transition. This is not just a plea from me as a teacher. It is a plea on behalf of the families who rely on us, many of whom have expressed deep concern over the destruction the sudden closure would cause. We are not asking for a permanent solution, just 3 more months. 3 months to allow these children to finish what they've started and for their families to make a smooth, responsible transition. I understand the complexities involved in development projects, So we are asking for your support in helping to secure this short extension. We have built a strong community over these 10 years, and we hope that with your help, we can honor the commitment we've made to these families. Thank you for your time and consideration. I urge you to stand with this and support this request for the sake of our children's well-being and their future. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you very much, Eileen, and for everyone in this chamber as well for presenting today. The next speaker we have is Jasmine McEachern. Hopefully I pronounced that your name correctly. Jasmine, are you? Hi.
I'm on the line here.
Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jasmine McEachern. I'm a lifelong resident of Vancouver, and I'm a parent of a child who attends Little Oak Montessori. I'm here today to express my personal opinions, not those of Little Oak. Although I'm in support of the proposed rental units in this Heather Street rezoning, I'm concerned about the lack of policy and resources supporting existing daycare operators, not just in the Cambie corridor, but across the city. If this rezoning is approved, partway through the school year, 25 families will be scrambling to arrange alternative care for their children. I understand that the operator has requested an extension from the developer to the end of the school year, which has been denied, demonstrating an unnecessary disregard of the children and families in this school. In 2021, it was estimated that in Vancouver there was a shortfall of over 7,000 full-day daycare spaces for ages 0 to 5. Currently, 40% of daycare operators in the city are private operators that have filled a gap essential for the basic functioning of families in the city. Although the Cambie Corridor Plan has aimed to deliver over 1,000 additional daycare spaces, I was told by the rezoning planner for this project, quote, "The city does not have a policy for existing private childcare facilities when impacted by a rezoning application," end quote. I was also told by the city childcare team that, quote, "Childcare is a responsibility of the provincial government," end quote. Zoning and bylaws facilitate or restrict childcare operation, and this is very much the city's responsibility. Little Oak cannot easily move into another home in a residential area because of restrictions set by the city. In Making Strides, which is the city's childcare strategy, it says, quote, "The city will also explore opportunities to monitor and mitigate the displacement of childcare programs in non-civic facilities across Vancouver. Displacement of childcare through redevelopment most frequently affects childcare facilities where childcare use is not secured and where services are accessed through the private market. To reduce potential displacement of essential childcare in the future, the city will develop tools to help secure ongoing childcare use in non-city-owned facilities supported by city programs or investments," end quote. I'm disappointed to learn that there appear to be no tools. In November 2023, Vancouver City Council gave unanimous direction to staff to explore greater flexibility in providing childcare in residential zones. Recommendations were supposed to be brought to Council before the end of Q3 2024, which is Monday, September 30th, 6 days from now. I'm not aware of any changes or recommendations brought to Council on this matter. Improving access to childcare spaces in residential zones could be addressed with the stroke of a pen. I'm disappointed that the simple mitigating measure has not yet been resolved by this majority council. In addressing the housing crisis, we are exacerbating the childcare crisis. In addressing the housing crisis, we are exacerbating the childcare crisis, and children and families and hardworking daycare operators like Little Oak Montessori, an incredible daycare and valuable asset to the city, are left to suffer. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Jasmine. The next speaker is Renee Sencio. I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Yes, hi.
Hi. Please go ahead.
Hi. My name is Renee Sencio. I'm speaking in support of the new rental housing project on Heather Street near Oak Ridge Mall that's up for consideration. I've been a renter in Vancouver for 3 years, and me and my partner are saving up to hopefully buy a home one day, but until then, we remain renters, like so many others in Vancouver. and we found that it's hard to find good quality purpose-built rental housing in Vancouver. There just seems like there isn't enough rental buildings in Vancouver, and a lot of our friends have left the city given the lack of homes available and the cost to rent. So I think this project will contribute some needed rental housing in Vancouver. It's a good location, close to the Canada line, very walkable, and I support it. I think that this project should get approved, and I hope to see it get approved in the future. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Michael Buchan. Michael, are you online?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Michael Buchan. I've been a resident of Vancouver my entire life. I'm speaking in full support of this new rental building proposed in the Oak Ridge area. I really appreciate the fact that Vancouver is trying to prioritize the creation of new rental housing and specifically below market housing, which is needed very much in the city. This project is exactly the type of housing that is needed. It's also in proximity to rapid transit and the substantial Oak Ridge development across the street. I know a lot of people in the city would like to buy their own place, but simply they won't be able to. Just because somebody can't afford to buy something doesn't mean they shouldn't have access to great brand new product, which is significantly lacking in the city, in my opinion. The building's got great amenities for its residents. It's in a great location near transit, schools, parks, and shopping. Overall, it's a great looking project in a very strong location with a lot of new units of very high quality rental housing. I appreciate you guys hearing my feedback, and I hope you'll be supporting this project, and I look forward to seeing it getting off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking tonight. So do we have any other speakers online or in person?
None online, and I'm not seeing anybody coming forward.
Okay, great, thank you. So this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. So we will now take a 5-minute recess for any additional speakers.
Council, I'm just going to call us back after our 5-minute break. Just for councillors online, also just flagging that we're coming back. And you will need to have your, video on for voting in a moment. But can I check with the clerks to see if we have any more speakers, anyone online or anyone who's come in person?
Acting Mayor Dominato, it would appear there are no further speakers on the line, and I'm not seeing anyone coming forward. No more speakers.
Okay. Thank you to the clerks. Given that we have no other speakers in chambers or online, and seeing that there's little or no public comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing receipt of public comments. We'll now move to closing comments. Does the applicant have any closing comments? No? Do staff have any closing comments? No? I do have, council, do you have questions still? Yes, I see Councillor Klassen. I'll advance you.
Thanks very much, Chair. My questions are going to center around the loss of childcare spaces, and I think and reflect upon the comments of the speakers who came in today. Clearly, we have a gap in our policy. This is something that I've been flagging with our staff over the recent months as motions have come forward, approved with the support of council, to really review some of our childcare policy and see if there are more ways for us to create spaces. So the loss of spaces here is obviously very concerning. But what I heard from the speakers is a very, I thought, a thoughtful request, not opposing this project, which I believe I'm certainly feeling in support of, but whether there is a way to mitigate that time period. And I'm not naive to think that time is not money when it comes to housing development, but I'm wondering if staff sees any way forward that would allow us to potentially allow for the Montessori childcare to continue its operation until the summer months.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. We can definitely encourage the applicant to work with the operator in order to meet that end of year deadline.
Okay. And thank you for that. Is it possible that we can get a report back to council on that outcome? It would just have to be a simple email. It doesn't have to be anything formal.
Give them a minute to confer and then.
Thanks for that question. In terms of an update, I don't think we're permitted to communicate in between public hearing and enactment in terms of that process.
Okay.
Staff specifically.
Very good. Okay, and I appreciate that clarification. I do have my own discussions going forward with staff, so I'll be able to flag this as certainly a policy question in our discussions around it, separately around childcare, not particularly to this application.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But thank you for clarifying that. But also I'll just leave it there. My questions are done. Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks for those questions, Councillor Klassen. I'll advance. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on Councillor Klassen's question and with respects to kind of the trade-off for Montessori wanting to operate for 3 more months relative to kind of cost escalation in the construction environment. Any sort of trade-offs that you would see around encouraging the applicant to do that in terms of escalating cost tenders or trade, or not at this point of the stage? I'm just curious to understand that before council sends a signal to encourage Lion Montessori to stay there, without maybe hearing a bit more explicitly about any considerations that we might or should potentially consider that in terms of how it might impact the either speed or cost on delivery of that housing.
Appreciate the question. Templar Sanctuary Nice, District Director of Rezoning. We're certainly going to work closely with the applicant team after the outcome of this public hearing, should council approve the project, to help them through the next steps in the permitting process, which would include a development permit, a building permit, a demo permit. All of those things do take time. There is certainly within the realm of possibilities that they could achieve those permits by the end of August. perhaps sooner, but there's still quite a bit of process. So we'd have to wait and see how those efforts work out. Certainly more time adds more carrying costs, adds more to financing, adds more to that. In the interim period, interest rates might go down. So it's a bit of a mix-up, but we would certainly turn to the applicant for details on that, which I know you can't ask those specific questions on this project. So I'm not sure if I can fully answer your question, but adding time generally does add cost to projects.
It does. And if I can ask one follow-up, because you opened the door on it, Templar, and that was, are we saying that the May date is aspirational and that our city processes may not be completed? They may not actually have their permits and be ready to go by May, and it might be later?
I think it's a two-way street on permitting, right? So post-public hearing, it does take time to get an application submitted for us to start a review. It typically takes about 12 to 16 weeks to get to a decision. And then there's an iterative process to clear conditions and to actually get to a point where permits are issuable. And then once those permits are issuable, then you can pull your demo permits, for example. So it does take time. Most of these projects of this scale, I would be pleasantly surprised if it got there to an issuance by that date, but we'll certainly be working with the applicants.
As would I. So we might end up with a happy outcome just by virtue of time it takes to get these things done.
Our focus will be on the permitting process, and we're not looking to slow anything down. And I'd say the rest of it are business terms between the applicant and the operator and owner as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for those questions. Seeing no one else on the queue, I'm just going to ask staff and clerks, have we received any further public comments since we closed?
No, none.
Great, thank you. So, council, it's time to make a decision on this application. Could I get a mover for this application? Moved, seconded by Councillor Clausen. Any debate? Councillor Fry, go ahead.
Only just a couple comments, just to reflect. I think, it's a well-positioned project, obviously, and this is appropriate for the neighborhood. I do take the considerations and concerns of the daycare provider and the request for a 3-month accommodation. And I do note that it was just last year that we, offered an accommodation to this particular development on a request to defer CIC payments. So I think it's those kind of good faith kind of pieces that I hope maybe the developer might take away and think, 3 months, we could maybe buy a little bit of time for this daycare and allow them a smooth transition. But otherwise, I think it's a fantastic project, and I, hope that they can move forward and maybe throw an accommodation for the daycare. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be brief in just saying I do support this application. It's 184 new rental units, with 20% of those being below market. And we know how we are desperately short for rental housing with a less than 1% vacancy rate, which is Vancouver's is significantly lower than a lot of other cities. And as a result, supply and demand, we see higher rents there, and 20% are below market. We got one email that writing in support of this project that stood out for me and kind of expresses why we need this kind of housing, and it's starting to come off the arterials and moving into the neighborhoods now as a block off. And the person that wrote in said, I am writing to express my strong support for the proposed new development, which will help address the critical housing supply shortage in Vancouver. As we all know, the city faces a growing population and ever-increasing demand for affordable and accessible housing. This development represents an essential step toward alleviating this pressure by adding much-needed units. By adding more availability of homes, while it won't make rents lower, it will help moderate the rise in housing costs, promote more diversity in housing choices in our communities, and ensure Vancouver remains a livable and vibrant city for many people. And goes on to sort of along those lines. So I'm happy to support it. I suspect that there might be a happy outcome just by way of circumstance for the daycare provider, and I appreciate them coming out to represent that. And this is part of council's role, is oftentimes juggling competing demands and pressures. I know it's difficult when it impacts your particular situation, but I also was really happy to hear from staff that we are adding net new and scaling up pretty significantly the amount of daycare spaces that are going into the Oak Ridge neighborhood and along the Cambie corridor. So with that, I will support the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Young. And Councillor Clausen.
Yeah, thanks very much. Just a few final comments. Again, I'm very pleased to support this project. I see it as a very good fit for the changes that are happening in the Oak Ridge Cambie corridor, and I certainly think the development company that's behind it is not at the root of why we are having this discussion around the potential loss of the childcare spaces or the timing of it. It really boils down to a policy, and I think that as we continue to have conversations with our staff about how we can try and mitigate and create more childcare spaces, this is one that I would like to sort of vocalize my views that this is something that I think we can take another look at and try to make sure that private operators that provide incredibly important services like this that families depend upon are given the kind of daylight and prioritization that they deserve. And it will hopefully, as we've heard, I think just through the process of issuing of permits, that this works out to be a successful outcome for both parties. We get the new housing and we get the graduation time that supports the families and the children in the neighborhood. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor Claassen. And seeing no one else on the queue, we'll move to a vote. Just a reminder to councillors online, please have your video enabled. And clerks, I'll take a vote assist in favor, please. Councillor Bly, we'll need your video on for you to vote. Thank you.
My video is on, but I don't have a voting screen. Oh, there we go.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. I haven't seen the vote results. Thank you, and that passes unanimously. Thank you, Council. We'll move on to item 3 of our agenda this evening, and that is CD1 rezoning 975 West 57th Avenue. I'm just going to wait a minute we have staff leaving. While I'm doing that, does any member of council have a conflict of interest on this item number 3? Hearing none, I'll have the clerks now read the application and the summary of correspondence received to date.
This is an application by GBL Architects Incorporated to rezone 975 West 57th Avenue to R1-1 Residential Inclusive to CD1 Comprehensive Development District to permit the development of a 19-story residential strata building with 143 units and a 6-story mixed-use rental building with 47 units and a 37-space childcare facility. A floor space ratio of 3.14 and heights of 22.7 meters and 59.4 meters with additional height for rooftop amenity spaces are proposed. The General Manager of Urban Design and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. The following correspondence has been received since referral to public hearing. 1 piece of correspondence in support, 7 pieces of correspondence in opposition, and 1 piece of correspondence dealing with other aspects of the application. This represents all correspondence received up to 5:15 p.m. today.
Thank you, clerks. And this will be our first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list this evening. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added to the end of the registered speakers list. We have staff from Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability here to present the application. I understand they have roughly 12 slides to present this evening. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tess Monroe, and I'm the rezoning planner for this application. The site shown outlined in red is located on the east side of Oak Street between 54th and 57th Avenues. It was previously the location of the Salvation Army Homestead, which provided support programs for women and ended in 2015. The property was then sold and the buildings are now vacant. The area is well served with parks, public transit, bike routes, and community facilities. Several neighborhood-serving facilities are located nearby, including a synagogue, a senior living facility, and a secondary school. The site is located outside of the transit-oriented areas and is thus not subject to the TOA legislation. This proposal is being considered under the Canby Corridor Plan, which was adopted in 2018 following a comprehensive planning program setting out policy for growth over 30 years. Specifically, this site is one of several large unique sites addressed in the Canby Unique Sites section of the plan. These unique sites provide an opportunity to deliver diverse and affordable housing, local amenities, and increased neighborhood vibrancy. The unique sites are subject to an enhanced rezoning process to better engage with the community in reviewing proposals early on during the pre-application phase of the project. This process was undertaken in 2021, and a final preferred option was submitted as a rezoning application, which is before you today. The application was submitted in October 2023 and represents an 11-month timeline to public hearing. This site is expected to provide new housing options and amenities for families, leveraging its proximity to schools and significant open spaces. Improved public realm connections to and along Oak Street are expected, including a new east-west vehicle and pedestrian connection along the northern edge of the site from Oak Street to the eastern property line. This new public realm will eventually connect through to Laurel Street together with the redevelopment of the neighboring site at 57th Avenue and Laurel Street. Where market rental housing is included, modest increases in height and density to assist with project viability are supported, subject to urban design performance and delivery of amenities such as a new childcare facility. This proposal includes a 19-story residential building with 143 strata title units, a 6-story mixed-use building with 47 rental residential units and a 37-space childcare, a total floor space ratio of 3.14, building heights of 195 feet and 75 feet, 189 vehicle parking and 383 bicycle parking spaces, and a new east-west road along the northern property line. As part of the community amenity contribution for this application, the applicant has offered a childcare facility to be delivered turnkey to the city. The 37-space childcare facility, shown outlined in red here, is located on the ground floor of the 6-story rental building with outdoor play area located between the two buildings. The Q&A period for this project generated 33 comments, with support for the childcare provision, building height and density, and massing, and additional housing in the area. Themes of concern generally related to traffic congestion, particularly on Oak Street, the height of the tower, and concerns about lack of neighborhood amenities. Regarding traffic, engineering conditions require improvements to the intersection of Oak Street and 57th Avenue, including turn bays and advanced left turn arrows to help alleviate traffic congestion. In response to height, the proposed heights of 6 and 19 stories are consistent with the plan's expectations for these building typologies throughout the Canby Corridor. Finally, the proposal itself offers a childcare, which will add to the neighborhood amenities. There are also several amenities and services at the Pearson Dogwood redevelopment, 2 blocks to the east, offering commercial space, a childcare facility, and a public park. The total public benefit package for this application is valued at over $12.6 million. The bulk of this includes the turnkey childcare facility valued at $6.5 million, along with the development cost levies and public art contribution. I will note for council there's a typo in Appendix G of the referral report, which references an additional cash CAC beyond the in-kind childcare, which was not required for this application. No action is required by council related to this typo, as the rest of the report is accurate regarding the public benefits listed here. Given alignment with the policy directions and delivery of rental housing and a childcare facility, staff recommend that this application be approved, and staff and the applicant team are available to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks for that presentation. Do we have the applicant present?
They should be online.
Yeah, we are here online.
Fantastic. Do you have a presentation?
Did not prepare the presentation, would like to waive it, but we are here to answer the questions.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. Council, do you have questions for staff or the applicant? And just noting again, this is your only time to ask questions to the applicant. Don't all jump at once. No questions? Okay. Okay, well then we'll go to our second call for speakers. This is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445 pound before the close of the speakers list this evening. Phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speaker list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of this report. We'll now hear from the public. Do any members of the public signed up? I have the list. Thank you. Kyle Johnston, are you on the line?
I am.
Okay, go ahead, Kyle. You have 5 minutes to address council this evening.
Hi there. Thank you so much. My name is Kyle Johnstone. I'm a resident of Vancouver, actually a resident of the neighborhood, and I am one of those that are opposed to the development. I apologize. I don't have a full written speech laid out, and I just had some reactions to what I just heard during the application. I'm also calling from work, so I'm a little bit disjointed. Anyway, my kind of main concerns are to do with what was raised earlier about traffic. I'm a resident of 2 buildings north of the proposed site, and our entrance and exit of our residence also goes right onto Oak Street. And we have 28 residents in our facility, plus we have next door to us is the Temple, which also has the Montessori school, which will be increasing in size to about 50 students, and then the seniors facility at the corner of 57th and Oak that was highlighted before. If anybody were to take time during the week to see the amount of traffic that travels up and down Oak Street in the morning, during the rush hour, during lunchtime, after school and work time, it's a lot happening there. We could probably take a look at statistics and see that at 57th and Oak, there's probably a car accident conservatively once a week of some kind. Adding in this proposed facility, but also the street, which would be, I think, termed 55th Avenue on the north end of the proposed site, and talking about having 190 rental units between the 2 towers and 189 parking stalls inside. Just adding close to 200 vehicles, most of them emptying, let's be honest, onto Oak Street at rush hour in the morning and at lunch times and after work coming home and turning left into their property is just the conception of that many vehicles turning left and right onto Oak Street during those times is crazy to think about. Also, to think about the childcare that happens at the north in Temple Shalom with the 50-ish students that go to the Montessori, the additional 36 or 40 students. So we're talking close to 100 children playing in that area. Obviously, the Montessori takes place in the back of the temple, and the proposed childcare facility, their play area is in between the 2 buildings. But, you know, parents coming and dropping off, a lot of people park on 54th and 57th and walk down Oak Street, and just the almost doubling of children available coming in and out, and parents coming and going, dropping it off, just to me seems slightly scary on that side of things. Secondly, everything else that happens down Oak Street, all of the new developments, all are sort of 4 and 5 stories. And we see that the proposed front building is going to be 6 stories, but the building in the back is going to be a 19-story building, which fits in nowhere along Oak Street. Everything else is much lower down. And that brings up the term that this is part of the proposed Canby corridor, which the address of this is on 57th Avenue, but I don't see this as being part of the Canby Corridor project. The main entrance and exit will be going onto Oak Street. It was introduced right out of the gate as it's off the east side of Oak Street. So I don't understand how this can be classified as part of the quote-unquote Canby corridor when it's 5 blocks away from Canby. It's the only building that's going to be on Oak Street that would be anything over 6 stories and would be just totally not in the aesthetics of the neighborhood, and all of the other buildings that are going up, the townhouses to the north of this up towards 49th and past, and down to almost 70th Avenue, of all of that down there. It just doesn't blend in with the neighborhood. And that's it for me. I appreciate your time, and thank you for letting me have the chance to speak.
Great, thank you very much. So do we have any other speakers online or in the chamber?
None online. Don't see any coming forward in the chamber.
Great, thank you very much. Okay. So this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445 # before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. So we're now going to take a 5-minute recess for any additional speakers.
Just checking, Mayor. As of 7:28, there was no further speakers on the line. I'm not seeing anybody come forward, just looking for confirmation.
Thank you very much. Okay, so seeing that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. And seeing that there are little or no public comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing the receipt of public comments. So does the applicant have any closing comments?
Thank you.
Do our team members have any closing comments? Oh, great. Does council have any questions for our team members? Seeing no one in the queue, just making sure, okay. Clerk, have we received any additional public comments since the close of the public comments?
No.
Great. Okay, so council will now make its decision on this application. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Great. Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Joe. Is there any debate? I see no one in the queue. So why don't we put this to a vote? And by the way, I do want to disclose that I did review the notes of the speaker. So I'm able to vote. Thank you. And Councillor Bly, can you please put your video on? Oh, it's on. Great. Thank you. And Councillor Kirby Young. Thank you very much. Okay. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Right. Thanks, everyone. The next item is number 4, modernizing home-based business regulations. Does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item number 4? All right, seeing none. The clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by the General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability to amend the zoning and development bylaw to modernize the city's home-based business regulations. This supports the implementation of the Vancouver Plan and the city's employment lands and economic review. The amendments seek to improve flexibility for small businesses by allowing a limited number of employees and customers into residences for the purpose of conducting business. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. One piece of correspondence in support has been received since the referral to public hearing. This represents all correspondence received up to 5:15 p.m. today.
Thank you very much. Now, this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610. Followed by participant code 1061445 # before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added to the end of the registered speakers list. Now, we do have our team members from Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability here to present the application. Please note the GM of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability is the applicant for this item. And I do want to state that this item has no speakers registered, so council could opt to waive the presentation unless any member would find it helpful. So, would anybody like to waive this report? Move to waive. Okay, so Councillor Kirby Young, seconded by Councillor Joe. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. Well, we will waive the report, and I know it would have been an amazing report. We knew that. I think people want to go home, though. Okay, so are there any questions from council to our team members? And Councillor Dominato, you're up.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thank you for the work on this. This is I think 4 years coming, so appreciate it. I do want to ask, and I asked this offline, but I want to ask it in chambers. This is a big move ahead for people who are doing home-based business, and they've been calling for this for some time. And But I did inquire previously about the ability to operate small business in ancillary buildings like garages. We know it's happening. We have examples of this. People have been in touch with us. And in many cases, it's very aligned with the neighborhood. It might be like a dog walking business and things like that. Can you speak to whether this contemplates that or whether some further direction at a later date would be required around the ability to operate something again that would be appropriate to residential neighborhood?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Dominato. My name is Tori Montgomery, and I am a planner from the Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability Department. To answer your question, garages and accessory buildings are not contemplated to operate a home-based business out of at this time, and that's based on analyzing 311 complaints, as well as looking to other municipalities to see what their best practice is. So we're not recommending it right now. However, we will be monitoring the home-based business implementation should council approve it. And we can report back in a year with a report on operating a home-based business in a garage.
Okay, I appreciate that. That's what I thought the answer was. And I will move an amendment later just to reinforce just the direction and interest in seeing that, because I think it would be helpful. We've had a number of people express interest in this. I'm also curious in the context of expanding the ability and flexibility for home-based business. Does that also apply if you're living in a laneway? So how does that work in the context of other dwellings, residential dwellings on properties? And now we're moving into a whole world of multiplex. And could you speak to that as well?
Of course. So the way the regulations are written is any legal dwelling unit would be permitted to operate a home-based business, and they would all get those separate allowances, such as employees within limits and customers by appointments. So if you're within a laneway home, as long as you live within the laneway home, you can operate a home-based business from it. And then if there's somebody in the principal residence, they would also be allowed to operate their own separate home-based business with separate allowances for total floor area and customers.
Okay, and that also would apply to coach houses as well. I know we have fewer of those in the city compared to laneways, but that would be the same.
Yes, we've written it so it's anything that's defined as a dwelling unit would be allowed a home-based business, which includes coach homes.
Okay. I think that's it for questions. And when we're ready, I'm happy to move the report, and then I'll move the amendment separately.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no one else on the queue, this is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061-445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. And so, Clerk, do we have any speakers online or in the chamber?
Just checking, Mayor. Give me a moment. No speakers online, and I do not see any coming forward.
Awesome, thank you very much. Now, this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll-free 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061-445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. So we're now going to take a 5-minute recess and wait to see if we have any additional speakers. We have any additional speakers online?
No further speakers online.
Thank you very much. Seeing that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. Seeing that there are little or no public comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing the receipt of public comments. Do our team members have any closing comments? Nothing? All right. Does council have any questions for our team members? No. Okay. So have we received any additional comments since the close of public comments?
So, but
No? Okay, thank you very much.
no.
Okay, so we're now going to make a decision on this application. Do we have a mover for the recommendation? Great, thank you, Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Kirby Young. Is there any debate? And Councillor Dominato, you are on deck.
Thanks, Mayor. And yes, so I've circulated an amendment to council. I'm just pulling it up, and I know the clerks will bring it up there while they're doing that. It just speaks to my question, and it is that council directs staff to report back on considerations and options for allowing home-based businesses to operate in accessory buildings, including garages. And again, this flows from conversations I've had with residents who, in some cases, I think it started organically tinkering with, motorcycles, doing dog walking, and they started using their garages. But again, the interesting doing it in a way that whatever the business is that it's appropriate to a residential area, so no different than what's proposed with the expansion around home-based business in the residential dwelling. And I'll speak maybe more broadly to this maybe I'll speak to it now, is the importance of this review, and this began last term. We were getting questions and queries about how we could support people with their home-based businesses and that there was more flexibility in other jurisdictions. I just want to underscore how important that is, because the overhead costs of operating a business and leasing space is incredibly high, and there are many businesses that can operate from home and be done in a safe and appropriate way where people can receive clients. I think we had an example where someone said they were a massage therapist and they were seeing a few clients and so on. And based on and I appreciated all the data you provided around public feedback and interactions with residents and current owners and also others who wanted to have home-based businesses. But it makes a significant difference, particularly as we know how expensive it is to live in the city, and cost of living right now is really top of mind, and affordability. So this just makes it a little bit easier, recognizing there has to be some guardrails around what can actually happen and operate in a home. But I'd be interested to hear how it goes over the next year, and also the possibility of these accessory buildings. So that's the thrust of the amendment.
Thank you. And can we have a seconder? Great. Councillor Fry, thank you. Okay, Councillor Kirby Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I wonder if I could ask a question of you through to staff?
Sure.
Okay. And it might be a question for our Director of Planning potentially, but I'll see who wants to answer it. And I'm just wondering if in council sort of sending staff off on doing this work, any comments sort of around considerations we should be aware of as to how this might intersect with our housing goals, such as moving away from single-family zoning and looking to densify and put missing middle options in different neighborhoods? Is there potentially a tension between doing that or sort of supporting businesses and providing more housing as people get entrenched in their single-family homes?
It's a good question. I think we have a lot of conversations about, for example, through the multiplex residential policies, subdivision policies around that, like how that fits into long-term redevelopability. I think it's an interesting question to think about as we kind of monitor this program over time. I don't know if I have a definitive answer for you whether we've thought through that trade-off to date, but I think given the feedback or question you're posing today, that's a question we can kind of take away, and as we monitor these programs, take that lens into account as we continue to report back through council.
Okay, and then just for clarity, just by follow-up if I can, Mayor, when you say these programs, I'm referring specifically to contemplation of opening up more options with the amendment as opposed to the considerations that are in front of council to pass tonight. So I just want to make sure my question was clear.
Sure. Actually, do you mind trying to rephrase that?
Yeah,
Sorry,
I'm
quite
asking the question specifically of the amendment. Like if we allow, is there an intersection potentially in home-based businesses? And is that something that we might see in a report back as to where there might be trade-offs potentially between allowing home-based businesses to operate in the accessory buildings as the amendment contemplates and wants information back on and any impact on housing goals?
Are you asking if we can take this direction away and report back with this?
Yeah, I'm asking if that would come back, if that would be part of the information that council would get
I think we
back.
can, yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Yeah, I'll speak to this amendment and to the motion in general. I appreciate this amendment for what it's bringing forward as for staff to report back with considerations and options. And indeed, an accessory building could be a garden shed, and maybe it's a gardener who needs to store their gardener stuff in a garden shed, and it makes sense from a small business. I really appreciate the work that's gone into this and the fact that we're moving forward on it at all. Prior to being elected, I was self-employed. I used to live in a warehouse space, and then when I moved into a house, I went from living at work to working at home. And for, a couple of decades, I worked at home, and I used to joke more recently before I was elected that because I couldn't bring clients by the house, but if I had an Airbnb license, I'd pay less license fee and I could have as many guests as I wanted. And I thought, oh, what an obscene irony. But here we are. So I'm glad that we're moving forward on it. I think it's a great opportunity for actually even, potentially more revenue capture and getting more folks licensed, because the reality is that I would never have licensed my home business unless I actually had to, because I had a contract that demanded that I had a business license, because it made no sense to me. And I think that there's probably a lot of people who would love the amnesty and opportunity to license their business, run it legitimately, have their clients come by. And so I really appreciate this step forward. So thank you for the work on it. And thank you, hopefully, if this amendment passes, for the additional consideration around accessible accessory buildings and reporting it back on those opportunities. So thank you both. That's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay. Seeing no one else on the queue, why don't we put the amendment to a vote? Great, and the amendment passes unanimously. And so, seeing no other comments on this, why don't we put the report as amended to a vote? And that passes unanimously as well. So thank you very much. And thanks for all the hard work that you put into this. It's really going to make a huge difference to a lot of people and a lot of businesses. So it's pretty cool. Thanks. Okay. The next item on the agenda, and the last item on the agenda, is number 5, short-term rental regulations. Oh, request to speak. See you later. Cheers. Okay, so does any member of council wish to declare a conflict of interest on item number 5? Okay. All right. The clerk will now read the application and summary of correspondence received.
This is an application by Chief License Inspector in consultation with the General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability to amend zoning and development bylaw to alter the definition of short-term rental accommodation to be a temporary accommodation for a period of less than 90 consecutive days to align with provincial legislation. The General Manager of Planning, Urban Design and Sustainability recommends approval subject to conditions set out in the summary and recommendation. One piece of correspondence in support has been received since referral to public hearing. This represents all correspondence received up to 5:15 p.m. today.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, this is the first call for speakers. Any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 1061445 before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. There will be an opportunity for new speakers and missed speakers to be added to the end of the registered speakers list. Now, we have team members from development, buildings, and licensing here to present the application. Please note that Chief License Inspector, in consultation with the GM of Planning, Urban Design, and Sustainability, is the applicant for this item.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Sarah Hicks. I'm the Chief License Inspector, and I'm here tonight to present information relating to the report before you with recommendations to amend the zoning and development bylaw in order to align city regulations with provincial short-term rental regulations. So the city's short-term rental regulations were implemented in 2018 and were heavily informed by the Housing Vancouver Strategy 2017 to 2027, which includes a strategic priority to protect and retain rental stock. A key implementation of short-term rental regulations was to address the illegal short-term rental market and concerns at the time that long-term rental supply was being depleted through the conversion of long-term rental housing to short-term rentals. The guiding principles for short-term rentals aim to balance the protection of units for renters who often struggle to find stable long-term housing and also provide support for residents with a high cost of living. Enabling short-term rentals also supports our tourism industry. In the coming years, Vancouver is going to play host to several upcoming events, including such things as FIFA, where we will see an influx of visitors. Short-term rentals play an important role in providing accommodations in that sector. The City of Vancouver was one of the first municipalities in the country to implement short-term rental regulations. The city's short-term rental regulations include such key items as every short-term rental operator must be licensed. The short-term rental unit must be the principal dwelling unit of the license holder. The unit has to be a legal dwelling, so no RVs or tents or boats. And that units that have landlord and strata in place must have that approval. The business license number must also be displayed on all advertisements. In addition to these regulations, staff also have developed a prohibited buildings list, which includes SRA buildings and Rental 100 buildings, as well as stratas being able to self-identify where short-term rentals are not permitted in the entire building. Next slide, please. So the Provincial Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act received royal assent in October of 2023 and is coming into effect in a phased approach. Aligned with the city regulations, the Act requires that the operator be the principal resident in order to operate short-term rental in their unit. Via the Act, all platforms are required to provide monthly data that includes detailed information on listings, including location, operator information, as well as previous bookings. This information is shared with local governments through a provincial portal. Via that portal, staff now have access to data from all major platforms, enabling a more fulsome and data-driven compliance and enforcement program. The Act has added an additional compliance tool for municipalities where platforms are now required to remove unlicensed listings at cities' request. Staff have been actively using the provincial portal for the removing of unlicensed listings. This regulation assists with the removal of invalid or unlicensed listings, as well as for files in which the city has suspended the business license. A provincial compliance and enforcement unit is being staffed up in order to track related compliance for the Act. While this team will be looking at compliance across the province, their focus is on the Act. City staff will continue to investigate and enforce the city's regulations for short-term rental, including licensing requirements and principal residency requirements. And a provincial registry is expected to launch in early 2025, where all hosts will be required to participate in order to continue listing their units for short-term rental. Short-term rental listings will need to include both the provincial registry number as well as a local government's business license. So under the Act, operators are allowed to short-term rent their principal residence as well as one additional secondary unit if that unit is on the principal residence property, such as a secondary suite or laneway. This regulation differs from the city as short-term rental activity is only allowed in a unit where the individual lives. Short-term rental of the laneway house or a secondary suite is only allowed if the operator, whether that be the property owner or a renter, lives within that particular unit and it is their principal residence. As secondary suites and laneways make up an important component of Vancouver's rental properties and vacancy rates continue to be below 1%, staff are not recommending changes to the city's regulations in this regard. A second difference is that the province defines short-term rentals as anything less than 90 days. This differs from the city's current definition of short-term rental, which is defined as less than 30 days. So staff are recommending updating the definition of short-term rental accommodation in the zoning and development bylaw in order to align with provincial legislation. Another change that came through an order in council increases the allowable fines for municipal ticket informations or MTIs from $1,000 up to $3,000 per infraction per day. This change allows the city to amend its bylaws to raise MTI fine amounts for any offense that is an MTI-related offense, not just short-term rentals. MTIs are an effective tool where the offender is known. Due to the requirement that an MTI must be properly served, MTIs are not currently used by the short-term rental proactive enforcement team. It is less administratively burdensome and less staff intensive in order to issue the bylaw violation notices which we currently use, which do not require an in-person service. Currently, the bylaw violation notice sets the fine at $1,000 per infraction with an early payment of $500. This slide gives you an overview of some of the short-term rental metrics since the provincial regulations came into effect in May. So our team works diligently every day in order to seek compliance on short-term rentals. Part of that process includes license verification. So that is looking at a license at the beginning of its life cycle and determining whether the applicant meets the base requirements for licensing. And includes audits of existing licenses that may have been in operation for a time of being, ticketing, legal orders, and particularly draw your attention to the bottom of the list where the new tools for the city are in play, including being able to issue warnings through operators through the provincial portal. Since May, we've issued 422 warnings through their system. We've escalated 287 of those warnings up for takedowns where we have not seen compliance either through licensing or removal by the owner. And a further 69 of those have been escalated to the provincial compliance team where listings have not been yet removed by the platforms. So staff are proposing two recommendations in order to align the provincial legislation and to improve compliance tools available to the city. The first recommendation is to amend the city's definition of the short-term rental accommodation within the zoning and development bylaw. The current city definition of less than 30 days is more lenient than the Act allows. The proposed change, if approved, would align the short-term rental zoning definition with that of the province for rentals of less than 90 consecutive days. Operators wanting to rent their primary residence for a period of less than 90 days would be required to apply for a short-term rental business license. The second recommendation is related to the municipal ticket information, or the MTI. If the province amends how an MTI can be served, it could become an enforcement tool for short-term rental related offenses. MTIs are a form of ticketing and are certainly an alternative to the current BVN that staff use. MTIs have to be served on the accused. They are an effective tool, particularly where your offender is known, where you're having an in-person interaction with that individual, and the offense is before you. Due to the requirement that an MTI, for the service requirement of an MTI, they are not currently used for short-term rental offenses. The provincial government increased the maximum MTI fine that can be collected with the intention that it could potentially be used for short-term rental enforcement. Given that it is a significant administrative burden for the city to serve MTIs in person, staff recommend that council request that the province amend the Vancouver Charter to allow MTIs to be delivered or served by registered mail or electronic mail. This would better enable staff to consider MTIs and their fine amounts as opportunities for short-term rental offenses. That is it for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So are there any questions from council to our team members? And yes, there are. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I have several, and I'm going to preface this by saying they might be dumb questions, but I'm just not clear from the report and the presentation, and maybe it's because it's been a long day. But in very simple terms, the 90 days is more or less stringent than what Vancouver has today, and why are we changing it? Because I'm trying to parse that out from the report in simple language.
Certainly. So the provincial legislation defines a short-term rental as anything less than 90 days, which means in Vancouver, currently any rental occurring between 31 days and 90 days must comply with provincial regulation of being a principal resident, getting licensed where applicable, going through for the registry with the province. They cannot have short-term rental occur in the unit unless the principal resident is within those. We are looking to align with that to ensure that our regulations are in line and compliant for administrative ease with applicants and businesses.
So is that more or less stringent than today? I'm still like, I'm sure this is me, but I'm still not getting it.
Our current 30-day regulation is more lenient than the provincial legislation. The 90 days is more stringent. We should be in line with the 90 days.
Okay. Okay. Maybe there's something that's just not sinking there for me, but I'll try to ask a follow-up and keep going for time. Yeah, I'm really not clear. I'm going to come, I'm really not clear about that. Let me switch to a different question. Maybe I'll come back on that one. Recently, we were at the Union of BC Municipalities Conference and had the opportunity to meet with the housing minister, who expressed some dismay that there was, as it was phrased, a significant number, won't sort of speak to numbers of listings that on the services that do not have business licenses, and seemed to suggest there was work for Vancouver to do there. And so we're looking to see if this additional registering by mail or sort of additional weight with the provincial legislation is going to help that, or why we find ourselves in that situation if we didn't have enough teeth previously to enforce. But I wonder if you can comment on that.
So the platforms prior to the provincial legislation were not required to remove listings. It was incumbent upon the city in order to do the enforcement and seek the applicant to remove those listings from platforms. That is a challenge, particularly where we may not have had appropriate addressing information in order to identify a particular unit to take enforcement action. With this legislation and the portal that's available to us now, we are actively, regularly requesting those takedowns of listings and seeing those numbers come down of unlicensed listings. The 30 to 90 day component is a chunk of listings that we currently cannot action because they're outside of our regulations. And they're...
How are they outside of the regulations?
They're outside of our regulations because they are not considered short-term rentals at this time. They're considered long-term rentals with the city.
Okay, third question is with respects to, and again, just looking for clarification, and I think it's because it's late in the day. So the Vancouver's maintaining, is it correct? Vancouver's maintaining a higher standard. It has to be your principal residence and not a secondary unit unless it's owner occupied, whereas the provincial does allow for a secondary unit to be rented on the
Correct.
same property. So Vancouver will still have a higher standard in that regard?
Yes. Yes, the standard, the province sets the floor for the regulations across the entire province. Municipalities can generally make those more stringent. And at this time, staff are not recommending changes to the secondary
Mayor,
suite.
can I move for a second round? I want to come back on later to try to clarify my first question.
Sure, seconded by Councillor Joe. All in favor? Opposed?
Thank you.
Passes. Thank you. So did you want to, okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Sarah, for this presentation. I had a couple questions as well. You mentioned this provincial portal. Just so I understand the function of it, does that provide access to the emails and address information of all hosts currently with listings in Vancouver?
It provides the contact information and addressing information that those hosts put into those portals.
Okay.
We are finding circumstances where it is not complete information yet and working through the process to have those removed if we can't prove that they are licensed.
Do they put it into the platform or into the
Yes.
portal?
To the platform.
So the platform then outputs that into the portal?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then how many months has that provincial portal been up and running?
We've had access to the portal since the beginning of July.
Okay. Something I've always wondered, and we've received emails about fake license numbers on listings, that sort of thing. Is there any sort of cross-referencing between, I guess, municipalities that issue the licenses and the platforms to verify if those license numbers on listings are indeed valid?
Not through the platforms, no. We do have our own internal tool, which is able to quickly, ingest all of the data previously received via Airbnb and make those comparisons to be able to find those for us and us be able to take actions. We are working with the province in order to find opportunities to ingest the portal data in order to speed that process up for staff as well.
Okay, but in your experience, does that internal tool that we have work effectively?
Sorry,
cross-referencing tool, does that work effectively in your opinion?
Yes.
Like what we have currently? Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay, you mentioned provincial escalations, some of these listings that are get escalated to that level, and then you mentioned that some of them are not being removed by the platforms. So where's the breakdown there? I'm just between the, I guess, provincial government and the platform, or is it between the city and the platform? I just want to get a better sense of why there's some issues with compliance, or seems to be.
So through the regulations, the cities have the opportunity to request the takedown. That's all documented throughout the portal. Once past that step, it is within the provincial jurisdiction fully in order to continue compliance on those files.
Okay, just to clarify, so they request the takedown through the city would request the takedown through the portal?
Yes.
And then that information goes to the province?
That information goes to both the platform and the province.
Okay.
And when action is not taken, where we continue to see activity occurring, we escalate that listing up through the provincial compliance team. And then they take action because the platforms are no longer in compliance with the provincial act.
Okay, but I think, and correct me if I'm wrong from your presentation and your comments, is that doesn't always result in compliance once it's escalated to that provincial level.
Not always, no, which means we can continue to take our own enforcement actions through ticketing, orders, prosecution, where we have the appropriate evidence in order to proceed.
Okay, so do we have a sense of why that's not happening? Is it like a resourcing issue on their end? Is it staffing?
It's not clear at this point to staff. I think there are a variety of items that the province is discussing with the platforms.
Okay, okay. It's just that we get blamed for it. So, okay, that's all for me now. Very complex. So thanks for answering my questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So I do have some question here as well. So, one of the concern I heard from the communities regarding the 30 days to 90 days, Vancouver is very different from other municipalities. We have a lot of seasonal workers coming to the city before they can live here for 2 months, but not considered as a short-term rental. Now they have to, if they live in the accommodation, that would consider as short-term rental. So that would, of course, adding the complexity for both the labor market as well as our enforcement. So what is our mitigation strategy to solve that issue? Do we know?
So in terms of the regulations, I think there is a component of education that will be undertaken if this recommendation is approved by council in terms of educating that market of the 30 to 90 days. And to be clear, currently within the province, regardless of the city, the rentals from 30 to 90 days cannot occur unless it is within somebody's principal residence.
Yeah, but not Vancouver's bylaw right now.
Not within the city's bylaw, but by the provincial bylaw, which means in the city, those rentals cannot be occurring. It's an item that the city is not currently enforcing on.
Okay, and do we know how many renters between 30 days to 90 days? I guess really difficult to know.
From the portal data, it looks to be approximately 1,800 listings that are within that 30 to 90 day timeframe.
Okay. Okay, so other questions just to level setting because I saw some speakers on the list. So knowing this is a provincial legislation, do we have any other options instead of just complying with the provincial policy?
I mean, the city can certainly choose to be more stringent, and stringent in this term means a longer time frame. We could say that anything rented less than 6 months a year, the city considers as a short-term rental. It would be incumbent upon the city to do enforcement from that 90 to 180 day time frame. There would not be data in the provincial portal for those kinds of items. But for administrative ease, aligning with the province, particularly for operators and for platforms, aligning is a move that will make those regulations clear.
Okay, we can only be stringent, but we cannot be more relaxed compared to the provincial legislation. Is that right?
Generally, municipalities, should be aligned, if not more stringent, depending on the particular item we're discussing, when we're looking at a higher level of government setting regulations.
That's very clear. A follow-up question is a weird question, but what happens if we do not pass this report today? What happens?
If we don't pass the report today, I think it really lays out confusion in the Vancouver market about what can and cannot occur. Currently, the city licenses those items as long-term rental. They're clearly not long-term rental by provincial regulations, making it confusing for operators and clients in terms of getting licensed appropriately, and creates a potential market where we see operators artificially moving into that time frame in order to evade regulations, but then dropping their listings back to daily rentals in order to evade licensing requirements.
Okay, so another follow-up. Since we have to comply or align with the provincial legislation, and if we do not pass this report today, would that put Vancouver as in a really bad legal situation against the province?
That's a difficult question. It certainly leaves us open to challenge.
Okay.
Where we are not in alignment with the regulations.
Okay, so one more last questions. I saw there are 287 requests, provincial takedown requests. Do we know how many listings were actually taken down?
So the 422 warnings that were sent were all listings. Those we received compliance either through individuals becoming licensed and complying with licensing requirements, or them removing the listing on their own. Of the 422, 287 were sent to the platforms to remove, and at this time, 69 of those are not in compliance. So compliance can mean they come into line with licensing, or they get the listing removed. So it's a combination of both removals and compliance getting licensed appropriately.
Okay, I'm out of time here. Yeah, thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Sorry about that. Councillor Montague.
Thanks. Hi, Sarah. I'm going to beat this to death a little bit, but I think you answered it when you were responding to Councillor Joe. But I just want to confirm and just reflect back that I'm fully understanding. Basically, the 30 days that Vancouver considers short-term is now irrelevant because the province has set in a 90-day short-term policy that usurps Vancouver's 30-day policy. Is that correct?
While our bylaws are not illegal in the way that they are currently structured, it creates an administrative difficulty, for listings that are going from 31 days to 90 days. It is best practice, I believe I could even say best legal practice, to align where a higher level of government has set the floor for a regulation. We should be in alignment to ensure that we're regulating the same pocket of individuals. If we don't align, we have a very messy 30 to 90 day market of rentals that are occurring that don't fit provincial regulations for long-term rentals, which is 90 plus days, and don't fit short-term rentals for the city of less than 30 days.
Okay. And all we're looking at today is just changing that 90 days. We're not looking at any other of the short-term rental regulations. Even though some of Vancouver's are more stringent than the provinces right now.
Correct. Staff are not recommending any other changes at this time. We recommend waiting to see what the full implementation of the provincial regulations do to the short-term rental market prior to considering any other changes.
Okay. And I know sometimes when we try and fix one problem, we create others. The things like the province permitting short-term rentals in secondary suites, Vancouver not. What are other cities doing with regards to that? Is Burnaby allowing it in secondary suites? Is Richmond, is North Vancouver, or are they more aligned with Vancouver in not allowing it at all, other than in principal residence?
Can we get back to you on that?
Sure. Okay. I think that's all I have, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, hi, me again. I'm still, I've got to admit, confused, and I'm probably going to end up not voting on a report if I don't understand it. So I find myself in an odd situation because sometimes I don't agree with things, but I genuinely am struggling with this in the presentation and the answers. So let me ask the question a couple different ways. What does 90 days do essentially? Does it mean that I can sequentially rent out my place for like 3-4 quarters in a year for 80 something days and keep renting it on a short-term basis versus putting it into the rental market? Like, what is the actual impact of that?
So if that is your principal residence, you live within that unit, yes, you could rent for short-term chunks of time, whether that be 80 days or 2 days. It is your choice in order of what to do with that unit.
So do I have to, in the current scenario with Vancouver has 30 days, and if you move to 90 days, I don't have to apply for a short-term rental license in both scenarios right now? Or I do?
Sorry, restate the question.
In the current situation, if the bylaw is not changed, Vancouver has less than 30 days, do I have to apply for a short-term rental license? And in the new scenario, if this were changed and it was aligned with the provincial definition of less than 90 days, do I have to apply for a short-term rental license?
That's correct. But in the first scenario, while you wouldn't need to get a short-term rental business license, you would not be able to do the activity of 30 to 90 days unless you were the principal resident of that unit, because that is a provincial requirement.
I'm getting more confused by the answers. I have to be honest. So I don't know if there's a way to take a recess and get some clarity, or we refer this, or I'm just going to not vote on this item because I can't understand. I genuinely am at a situation I've never found myself in. I don't understand this and how it's presented. So I don't know if staff want to try to reframe it, and if not, I'll just excuse me. I'll look for guidance from the chair.
If I could take an opportunity to try and reframe it. The provincial requirements are set in place across the entire province. The province has said anything less than 90 days is considered a short-term rental, and therefore you must be a principal resident. That principal residency requirement aligns with what the city currently has. Whether you are 2 days or whether you are 90 days currently in the entire province, you must be the principal resident, you must be the principal resident on the provincial standpoint. Within the city, we currently say that anything less than 30 days is within the licensing framework that we have. The 31 to 90 days in the city of Vancouver, we would currently call a long-term rental. That no longer fits with the province.
I'm getting run out of time. Can I ask the question in real terms? What does this mean for either the availability of short-term rental in the Vancouver market versus the availability of long-term housing? Does it have an impact on either of those?
It should not have an impact on long-term housing because anything longer than 90 days is not going to be considered. Those units that fall within this time frame are being rented out on more shorter-term basis, usually month terms to people visiting for business purposes or for film industry. Long-term rentals, the purpose of the provincial regulations is to return more to the long-term rental market. The hopes are that some of these people within this 30 to 90-day time frame will decide to convert instead to long-term because they are not principal residents of their unit. Therefore, they are not eligible for a short-term rental through the province. And then if aligned with the city, they would not be eligible for short-term rental either because they do not live within those units, therefore returning units to the long-term rental.
Okay, I'm done. Thanks, Chair.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Fry.
Well, first off, I do appreciate your attempt to sort of plain English it for us and recognize that we've all had a super long day, so we're a little bit today. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I guess I had a couple of questions. First off, like within the nuance around secondary suites, how are we kind of finessing that? If a secondary suite is in a primary residence, what actually defines the difference between a suite that you live in technically, but it's not a basement suite, or what does that look like?
So if a unit is properly zoned building compliant and is considered a separate dwelling unit within the city, that is a secondary unit. So that could be a laneway, that could be a basement suite. If it has that approval through the city, then you must live within that very particular unit in order to short-term rent it. You can't live in the upstairs unit and then rent the downstairs on a short-term rental basis, but a renter could.
So, okay, so in theory, if somebody was to carve up a house into sort of illegal suites, they could?
Illegal suites? No, because those are not approved dwelling units.
Okay, that's clarification I'm looking for. Okay, so how are we future-proofing this? You acknowledge that we have some big tourist events coming, and I mean, but you also acknowledge in this report that 80% of the short-term rentals are on Airbnb, but do we know if there's more than the theoretical 20% that are operating out there on various platforms? Do we anticipate that new markets might open up? I see a lot of stuff happening on Facebook Marketplace now.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question and one that we won't have an answer to at this time. The provincial legislation is a really big shift in this market in BC, with the registration still coming out early in 2025 for hosts. It will be interesting to see what impact that has on the market, both in terms of providers as well as in terms of supply. I think it's something that we have to continue to monitor. We know there are other sites that provide short-term rental. The province knows that there are other sites. Those sites are included. Facebook Marketplace is, included in the definition of a platform if they are providing those rental services. So it will be incumbent upon the province in order to bring those into the data platform.
So the province will be going to Facebook and saying, we would like you to be compliant with data sharing protocols or whatever it is.
If that's where we see market shifting, certainly the majority of the supply is certainly on Airbnb and other large operators that we likely all know, like Vrbo, Expedia, Booking.com. Those are the bigger players where the majority of the data is held.
So I guess the last, and this again, delving into the completely theoretical, but do we have some kind of contingency plan? Do we appreciate what's going to happen with like the Taylor Swift or the Invictus or whatever these big events are that are coming that we simply don't have the hotel rooms, and how are we going to analyze and respond to that? Because I feel like the market is a lot bigger than we legally or that is legitimately framed.
I think the key to our regulation is that if you live in it, you can rent it. That means that every unit within the city where there is a resident, it can be short-term rented. We can certainly look for opportunities to, very similar to the 2010 Olympics, encourage individuals who may not need to be here during those peak times. You may want to consider the opportunity of short-term renting. Will that pay for your vacation to be able to, get out of town during this busy time if you're not going to partake in the activities? I think there's opportunities for us to look at that. Thank you. We need to remain aligned, with the provincial legislation in order to not allow something that is illegal on a provincial standpoint. So there will certainly be ongoing conversations, I'm sure, with the province about how this will evolve, certainly depending on which government forms in the fall.
Thanks, Sarah. I yield my extra time so you can hydrate and do a lot of talking.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'll wait until you finish. Okay.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so I'm gonna rephrase Councillor Kirbion's question, Sarah. So I think I understand the question and I know the answer, but you let me know if my understanding is correct. Okay, so based on the current short-term rental City of Vancouver's bylaw, our definition of short-term rental is 30 days.
Yes.
Which means any duration under 30 days will require a legal license and also will require the primary residence.
Yes.
Okay, and anything above 30 days right now, like 31 days, you don't even need a license. You don't need to even need a short primary residence. You can just go ahead and rent it.
You would need a long-term rental license?
Long-term, but not short-term.
Correct.
Because it's not regulated under short-term rental license. Correct. But in the future, based on this report, we changed the criteria from 30 days to 90 days, which means any duration under 90 days, including 30 days and 90 days, will require a license.
Correct.
Will also be compliant under the primary residence regulation.
Yes.
So that's the difference, fundamental difference we are doing this report right now.
Yes.
And okay, the second recommendation in this report is because MTI, we need to present the ticket to the operators in person. That poses us a lot of challenge in terms of the enforcement. Yes. So we request the ministry change that regulation to allow us to send the tickets by mail or using other forms.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, so my understanding here is correct, right?
Yes.
So I hope I clarify the confusions here with everyone. Thank you. That's all my question or comments. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Sarah, for answering those questions. My question is a bit of a segue from that as well, and it was just to clarify to the point that Councillor Joe was making, does effectively the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, does it trump our bylaw effectively, and hence the alignment of wanting to align the 90 days?
It sets the floor for the requirements across the entire province. It does not necessarily legally trump our entire regulations. However, residents within Vancouver must still comply with the provincial regulations. So from the 60 to 90 days, they must still be the principal resident on the provincial standpoint. We're looking to encompass that now also in the city's regulations for alignment.
So I guess the secondary question to that is, and it's a hypothetical, would the city be able to maintain its 30 days given the provincial legislation, the statute, and the definition of 90 days? Do you see where I'm going with that? Is does the city have the authority to be more stringent in some ways and only have the 30 days versus the 90?
From what I understand, it leaves us open to legal challenge in the entirety of the regulations because we are more lenient in that regard.
Right. So in effectively, the best course of action here is to align and have that continuity with the provincial statute. Okay, that makes sense, and I appreciate. I think that's where Councillor Kirby-Young was going, and Councillor Joe, I think, clarified as well. So thank you for that, and thanks for addressing all the questions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my thanks to Councillor Joe for making it very clear to me too about the difference between the 30 and the 90 days. I'm just wondering, Sarah, if the change or the difference between 30 and 90 days and the difference between them is actually important to us as a city to accommodate certain kinds of renters. And I'm thinking of people who come into the city for a particular short-term job, for example, or a traveler.
Yes, and we certainly understand that there is a market out there for a 30 to 90 day time frame. It cannot occur in the province of British Columbia and including within the city unless that operator is the principal resident of that unit. That is the base that the province has set. So it can continue to occur if individuals, want to go away for the winter, for the summer, on longer term vacations and rent their unit. That can certainly occur, but the primary step before doing that is that they are the principal resident.
Great. Yeah, it certainly would accommodate people who tend to go south for 90 days in the middle of winter too. But I was also just thinking about the province bringing this in, thinking about some jobs I'm familiar with in the interior of the province, more rural oriented and construction kinds of jobs that 90 days might be more accommodating. But anyway, you've answered that question, which is great. The second question I have in reading this report is that BC's fine is $3,000 a day for up to $3,000 a day for infraction. Ours is $1,000. Is there any reason why you didn't pursue in this report changing the amount of the fine?
Yeah, so that is related to the service requirements of that particular kind of ticket. The ticket is called the Municipal Ticketing Information, or the MTI. That ticket is required to be served to an individual, an in-person service requirement. In short-term rental enforcement, it can be difficult in order to get into contact with operators of a particular listing. And does not make the MTI a user-friendly form of ticketing for our particular purpose. We use a ticket that can be sent through the mail in order to start to gain compliance and enforcement actions. If the second recommendation of this report, which is to request that the province change the service requirements of that MTI ticket to include things like registered mail or electronic mail or email, then at that point, staff could consider whether or not the MTI is a usable form of ticket for the infractions that we have.
Okay, and then we could increase that to be consistent with the province.
So the fine amount for the province, they raised the minimum, or the maximum, sorry, of the MTI fine up to 3,000. That is not only for short-term rental enforcement, that any ticket that uses the MTI framework is now eligible to seek the max fine amount of $3,000.
Got it. Okay, so are other municipalities going up to that maximum of 3,000, or are they?
Not that we know of just yet. The majority of municipalities do not use MTIs for the reason that they have to be served in person, and this industry is a difficult industry in order to serve.
Yeah, good. Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm clear. Thank you for your answers.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks. One last quick question. If the province backtracks, goes back to say a 30-day definition for short-term rental, how quickly, or would we go back as well, and how quickly could that happen?
We would certainly consider, aligning with the province again, and whatever council timeframes are at the time that occurred would dictate the timing. It would have to be another public hearing, so there would be a referral report and then the hearing.
Okay, but could be a month if that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Oh, now you can take a deep breath. Thank you very much. That was a lot of questions there. Okay, so this is the second call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium before the close of the speakers list. Speakers will have 5 minutes to make their comments and should limit their comments to the merits of the report being considered. We will now hear from the public. And the first speaker we have is Patrick Baldwin.
That's not me.
That is not you.
Hi. Hi, do you have me?
Yes, we do, Patrick. Please go ahead.
Hi, yes, I'm Patrick Baldwin. I'm a lifelong resident of Vancouver and raising a young family in East Vancouver. We're lucky enough to own our own home, which has a laneway house and a legal secondary suite. I'm calling to oppose the alignment of the city's short-term rental regulations with the province. There's a real need for people to stay in our city for periods less than 90 days. We're currently hosting a family from the Yukon that's in town for chemotherapy. They're here for 50 days. Right before that, we had another family here for the same reason, and it was a 35-day stay. Without places like ours, they would be forced to stay out of a hotel, living out of suitcases and closets, without a living room to gather in, without a kitchen to cook in. Sure, they could rent a suite, but this is likely well out of the budget for a family going through something like this. A basic hotel room alone for this length of time would be crippling to these families. And to touch on what Ms. Hicks said, the city has a need for a healthy short-term rental pool. This can be served by aligning the city's regulations with the province's in regards to the secondary suite exemption. And I think it's been clarified at this point, but for Ms. Kirby-Young, in respect to the difference between the 90-day minimum and the 30-day minimum, we're currently only allowed to rent our suite for a period of 30 days or more. This has allowed us to rent to the guests that were here for cancer treatment. If this were changed to 90 days, these guests would not be able to stay with us. We would only be able to rent for a period of 90 days minimum. Now, if the city feels it must align with the provincial rules in order to protect itself against being more lenient than what the province requires, we can protect that 30 to 90-day market by allowing secondary suites in principal residences. I also don't think it's reasonable to ask people to leave their principal residence to rent on a short-term basis to help with events like Taylor Swift, Invictus, FIFA, etc. It costs $1,000 to apply for a short-term license, and this effectively eliminates any incentive for people to take this route. As well as people that go south for 90 days in the winter, people that can afford to do this likely aren't going to be on the Airbnb platform short-term out of their principal residence. Beyond just this, there's people immigrating to the city who need somewhere to stay for a month or two while they sort out their long-term accommodation to figure out what neighborhood is right for them and to find work, as well as the short-term workers. Arbitrarily picking and choosing which aspects of the provincial regulations to adopt could end up being a costly mistake for the city. I don't support the 90-day minimum, and even less so without short-term access to legal secondary suites in a primary residence. There's a real need for short to medium-term accommodation, and effectively banning that in the city is going to have painful consequences for real people. I would suggest either fully adopting the provincial regulations where secondary suites are allowed in the short-term rental pool, or at the very least, holding off on this motion until after the provincial election. This will provide time to talk to stakeholders and the relevant industries and potentially save council a lot of time if a different provincial government were to repeal or change the Short-Term Rental Act. In terms of legal culpability, it's highly unlikely the province is going to engage the city before the provincial election. Thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much, Patrick. The next speaker is Grant Roberts.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Grant Roberts, and I've lived for over 22 years in a 3-story walk-up rental building at 1855 West 2nd Avenue in Vancouver. My neighbors and I learned that our building is up for rezoning and demolition for a 20-story tower, all enabled by the Broadway plan. You have no idea of the fear I feel with the prospect of having to involuntarily leave my home. In the context of staff recommendations on short-term rental regulations before you today, I would like to share my experiences having observed short-term rentals in my building. And and comment on the recommendations and inform you how the city's policies are affecting long-term renters in real time. Our rental building was built in 1972 and with a continuous maintenance that could still house tenants for decades. It is a community that lives here. 5 Mile Holdings purchased this building in 2013. Subsequently, when any tenants move out, they basically gutted suites without building permits or electrical and plumbing inspections prior to new tenants moving in. They rented these suites out, dramatically increasing rents. On September 13th, 2017, there was a notice posted in the lobby strictly prohibiting short-term rentals in the building. However, by early 2018, the building's owner, 5 Mile Holdings, began to illegally use all suites available for short-term rentals. These were hosted by Jordan Dermengian, who never lived in any of these suites used for short-term rentals. This was an egregious disregard of the rules and regulations governing short-term rentals. As tenants move out, these suites were added to Airbnb. Today, there are 16 of 36 suites used for short-term rentals, taking precious suites off the rental market during a housing crisis. Since 5 Mile Holdings purchased this building, requests for repairs by long-term tenants have gone unanswered and phone calls to property manager not returned. It is my understanding that building managers were instructed to be submitting repairs for non-Airbnb suites. This has been ongoing for years now. One tenant's kitchen cabinets were falling apart. Despite numerous requests, she wasn't given new ones. Finally, they ordered cabinets. However, the property manager said that they would have to agree to a $100 rent increase. This falls outside the Residential Tenancy Act. This tenant did not agree, and the cabinets continue to deteriorate. In another instance, a low-income senior with mobility issues had her suite flooded from a water leak. She had to move out for about 5 days while the dehumidifiers were drying the water damage. The equipment was plugged into her electrical outlet, resulting in an additional $100 on her hydro bill without compensation. The restoration representatives told her that the carpet needed to be lifted in areas around the suite to ensure that the leak did not cause mold. He felt sure it would be an issue. When the tenant requested a restoration company's report, she was flatly refused and continues to breathe this compromised air. I reference these two instances as the total disregard of 5 Mile Holdings to properly address the requests from long-term tenants. I understand that this is also prevalent in other buildings owned by the 5 Mile Holdings. Since short-term rentals have proliferated in my building, there have been numerous cases of late-night noise and even vomiting off a balcony. These short-term renters have left garbage outside their doors along with Amazon packaging. They treat this building like a hotel, and with no regard for the long-term tenants. When companies were When complaints were made to the building manager, they were instructed by the property manager not to speak to any Airbnb guests, so effectively they could do whatever they want. I see new faces in my building on a very regular basis. Also, the keys for these suites are not stamped with "do not copy," adding to security concerns for long-term tenants. The host for these suites has commented that 30-day short-term rentals are important for people displaced by wildfires and flooding. This is ridiculous. In my 40 years of living in Vancouver, I have never heard of the need for displaced people looking for short-term housing in Vancouver. Despite many complaints to the city about non-conforming short-term rentals, there was no enforcement. I would like to emphasize that the City of Vancouver has failed to enforce its own STR rules. Monitoring and enforcement need to be improved. Regarding the staff recommendation today, I totally support it. The change to align with provincial legislation and change short-term rentals from 30 to 90 days would address these issues. More importantly, it would put a great many rentals back on the market during this housing crisis. 5 Mile Holdings has multiple rezoning applications in the Broadway plan area to demolish existing rentals and build towers. They are working with JTA Development Consultants, which has a dozen such projects targeting mature rental buildings. All of this enabled by the Broadway plan. These developers are fueled by one thing and one thing only, and that's greed. But this is all enabled by the Broadway plan. There are more than 100 tower projects in the pipeline under the Broadway plan, and this will displace thousands of people. You have gift-wrapped the Broadway plan and turned it over to these greedy developers. It is time to pause the Broadway plan and conduct a serious review. So yes, please adopt the staff recommendations on short-term rentals, but also boost enforcement and seriously review the entire Broadway plan. Thank you very much for your time and your consideration.
Grant, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
And sharing your story. Okay, do we have any other speakers online right now?
No.
Okay. So this is the third and final call for speakers. If there are any speakers for this item who wish to speak to council, please call toll free at 1-833-353-8610, followed by participant code 106-1445# before the close of the speakers list. The phone number will be posted on X and made available on the live stream. Any speakers in the council chamber, please come forward to the podium. So we're going to take a 5-minute recess and wait to see if we have any additional speakers.
Just checking, Mayor. No.
Thank you. Seeing that there are no additional speakers, the speakers list is now closed. And seeing that there are little or no comments received after 5 p.m., I'm now closing the receipt of public comments. Excuse me. Do our team members have any closing comments? Sure.
In terms of other jurisdictions that align with the City of Vancouver's no secondary suites, it is cities like Richmond, Burnaby, Victoria that are currently on the same, you must be the principal resident of the particular unit in which is being rented. There are others, but I think those are three big ones.
Thank you very much. Does council have any questions for our team members? Councillor Joe?
We are in the question or the final comments here?
Nope, we're just in
Question. Oh,
questions, yep. Okay, you're good? Okay, great. Okay, so now did we receive any additional comments since the close of public comments? Nope.
No.
Thank you. Okay, so council will now make its decision on this application. Do we have a mover for a recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Joe, seconded by Councillor Claassen. Thank you very much. Now, is there any debate? Councillor Joe?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. So first of all, I really appreciate all the works behind this report. I know, our team, amazing team, has done a lot of work for this short-term rental regulation. I know it's really confusing to many people, but I really appreciate all the work behind. So there were a lot of loopholes in the previous short-term rental legislation, as we know. So that create a lot of issues, even impact our long-term rental market. And also that create a lot of issue for the neighborhood in a lot of condo buildings. So I really appreciate all the work there. So, but I think as we mentioned many times, in the housing crisis, every single unit matters. And especially this is Bill 35, it's a provincial legislation. And I really agree with the intention of this legislation. We have no other option but to comply with the provincial legislation. And but there are issues, reasonable concerns from the community regarding these 90 days. I heard a lot of pretty reasonable concerns from our film industry, from the short-term seasonal workers industry, which will make this new regulation more stringent and giving Vancouver special, very different situation compared to other municipalities. It does create a lot of issues. But I think what we can do is keep monitoring the implementation, and also I hope the registry, the provincial short-term rental registry, which will be implemented by the end of this year or early next year, will give City of Vancouver more tools in terms of the enforcement. So with that, I would like to support this report. But just noting that there are some concerns from the community, we need to keep monitoring and make this report and regulation, enhance this regulation moving forward. That's all my comments. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Joe. Councillor Montague?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This was a tough one for me when I was looking at this report, and I think we're being asked to look at two things here. One is the change to the use of an MTI, and I think that's a no-brainer. The ability and ease of enforcement is always a good thing when it comes to this type of thing. And the other is this change from 30 days to 90 days. I personally think that the 90 days right now it's meant to create a solution to some of the problems we have, but I think it's creating other problems. And like people said, around the film industry, the tourism industry, people coming for medical visits for whether it's for a month or 2 months or 3 months. I do think with proper enforcement, 30 days is more reasonable for a definition for short-term rental. But the provincial legislation, I think, is pretty clear, and it puts us between a rock and a hard place, where even if we kept it at 30 days, the person renting their suite for 40 or 50 days is still not compliant with the province. So we may as well align with the province. And if the province changes it back to, say, 60 days or 30 days, I would hope that we would look at that again to potentially, again, realign with the province. So those are the two things we're being asked to approve here. So I'm going to support them. Like I said, one, because I do support it, and two, because I think we're just put in a situation where we have no choice. But I would also like to potentially see us align with the other provincial regulations around short-term rentals, so there isn't as much confusion as to what people can do where, because we're not in alignment with the province on the other rules and regulations. Vancouver's more stringent in that way. But I think for these two, the 90 days and the MTI, I think we're in a position where we should be supportive. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks. I'm happy to support the MTI piece. I still think there's outstanding questions between, as Councillor Montague pointed out, the impacts between the 30 and the 90 days. May not be a complete analogy, but we often hear that, well, Vancouver has its own building code, and our buildings held to a higher standard, and that's better because we've advanced and we have higher seismic standards, advanced in sustainability. And then, and so it's okay for us not to be aligned with the province and the BC building code. And then here we're having a conversation that's more about, no, it's really important that we align for not only in terms of clarity and consistency around the application of that. And so somebody could understand if they potentially, what the rules are being applied equally if they're in Burnaby or Vancouver, whatever the case is. But yet the argument is different if you're building on one side of Boundary Road versus the other. So I'm struggling to synthesize this a little bit. I do think that there's some different potential consequences that, given what I think was intended to be a fairly simple report to align, it's a complicated policy area. STR regulation has been for some time, and there are quite honestly trade-offs around it. And as Councillor Joe said, sometimes you have to monitor them over time. I'm curious, and this is a procedural question, perhaps for the mayor, or perhaps through you, Mayor, to staff, is do we have the ability to sever the vote on these recommendations between the MTI piece and the 90-day piece?
I'm just double checking that question, Mayor.
Can we stop my clock for a minute?
Oh, yep.
Thanks.
It appears from a dependency perspective that Section A could be severed from Section B because they're two independent items. So I believe the answer to that is yes, and I'm getting head nods from.
Okay, I'd like to move to sever on the vote. Thanks.
Yep.
And for clarity of the record, I'm not going to be supporting A. I'm sure based on the dialogue I'm hearing on the table, it'll pass, but I don't feel clear enough that it warrants the change for me based on my personal takeaway from the report and the explanations tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Seeing no one else in the queue, we are going to put this to a vote. And so if we can please put A to a vote first, that would be great. Councillor Clausen, oh, there we go. Okay. And so A passes with Councillor Kirby-Young in opposition. So now we will go on and vote on B. And B passes unanimously. So thank you very much. Thank you. Can we get a motion to adjourn the meeting? Great. Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Montague. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.